It's August. We've probably had heat stroke or some form of heat exhaustion 35 times just to get to this day. The day when we're loaded up with tomatoes and we want to do something a little more interesting. Today's that day. I have already had these tomatoes peeled because I froze them. And it saves you so much time. As you harvest throughout the season, you bag them up and you freeze them. Obviously not the ones you're eating fresh because those are delicious and they're gone by the time the sun sets. But in this case, what I do anyway is I pile them up into bags and I freeze them as I go so I can have just a few big processing days. Please excuse the washer, real life. And I pile them up in the freezer and I annoy everybody by filling our second freezer to the gills with stuff from the farm so that we can just handle them in couple of weeks and then we're ready to go. Now, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, so I'm going to mention it now. When I grow tomatoes, I grow like 9 different varieties. And I don't just have one that I can and one that I do this or that with. I like, obviously, slicing tomatoes, you eat them raw. But when I'm canning my tomatoes, I like to have a really complex flavor. And in order to get that, I mix together all different kinds. I've got yellow, I've got orange, I've got cherries, I've got grape tomatoes, I've got paste tomatoes that I brought the seeds in from Italy like a lunatic. Yeah, I did that. I've got several different types of slicers. So I have some that have high acid, some that are very, very sweet. Look at the colors, you'll see all the different varieties. And the reason for that is I want complex flavor. I don't want to have one flavor that's the whole jar and that's all. I did that for years and I just decided I wanted to just give it a try one year and I never went back. So when I'm canning tomatoes, I can the full variety because the depth of flavor is so much better. That being said, what we're also going to do today is we're not just going to can them, put them in a jar, put a little salt, a little bit of lemon juice and can them up. I've done that for years. There's plenty of videos doing that. You don't need to watch me do that. I do put a few up, like maybe 12, 15 jars. Everything else I do something a little more interesting with because my pantry, I want my pantry to feel like inspiration. Because in the middle of winter and we've got homeschool and we've got this, that going on, I just want to have a little more fun. And so I looked at that pantry that I've been stocking all summer and I passed out in the grass and a duck pooped near me. I do all of that so I can have cool stuff in my freezer and in my pantry. This is going to be one of those things. When you freeze your tomatoes, the beauty of that, not only does it let you build up enough to make a nice big batch of whatever it is that you're wanting to make, there's a fly. So I should have that on a t-shirt. There's a fly. What I do is, in this case, I'm sorry, the fly distracted me. I'm not even going to stop the video and keep going. The fly and I are having an issue. I've been chasing that fly for 15 minutes. I'm hot. It's faster than me. I've accepted it. Anyway, when you freeze tomatoes, the skin slips right off. I probably already mentioned that when I was peeling them in yesterday's video. If I didn't, I said it again. I apologize. That's the beauty of things. Now we saved those peels and I'm going to show you why. I throw out as little as possible. And for an example, this was last week, I made strawberry scrap vinegar. This is the beginning. In about 2 weeks, well, maybe a week and a half now, we will be checking the pH and we will be taking the fruit out of here. And I'll show you what we do with that next. And it takes about 4 months for the whole process to finish. But this is what I do with something that would have either gone to the animals, because let's face it, we've got a farm full of animals and they love our scraps, but we should have some too. Scrap vinegar is great, but that's not what we're doing with the skins for these tomatoes. In fact, let me stick this over there. The skins for these tomatoes, I'm going to turn into something really cool, and that'll be its own video because this one would be really long. In here, we've got our tomatoes that I peeled yesterday, and then I drained, and this has been draining overnight. This drained for at least 24 hours. We want to get this as dry as possible. Will it ever be bone dry? No, it's a tomato. But we're gonna roast them. And we're gonna roast them with some, I have sliced onions. They're, quite literally, sliced onions, and a whole bunch of garlic. Grew it myself, thank you. And we're going to pan this up. We're going to drizzle it with lots of olive oil, salt and pepper. We're not going to put herbs in it right now because that's going to be in another step. And this is going to roast. And it's probably going to take a good while, maybe even an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours. We want to have some of that caramelization. And then we'll go on to the next step. But what you're going to end up with at the end is a sauce that has excellent flavor, much deeper, not just because we used a bunch of different tomatoes, but because of the method of roasting it and intensifying the flavors, adding the background of onions and garlic that also roasted that are going to be broken down into that sauce. And then after it's reduced and done all the things, then we can. And it's an awesome thing to have on the shelf. Makes great pizza, you can turn it into any pasta sauce. It's delicious. So why not do it this way? At least with some of your tomatoes, give it a try, see what you think. I'm gonna get all set up for roasting and I'll be right back. So now these are all defrosted. I have to drain them. There's just a huge amount of liquid that comes off. We don't want any of it. Slips right out. Just pinch it and slip. Now, remember what I said, this is a homestead. So much like with the vinegar that I started with you guys a couple of days ago, we save our scraps. We're gonna do the same thing with the skins from these tomatoes. Waste not, want not. Tomato powder is hugely flavorful, and I'm gonna show you how to make it. And then when I'm done showing you how to make it, I'm gonna show you how to use it. I have no interest in showing you how to make things that just sit on your shelf. That's a waste of your time and mine. And I don't have time for that. And I don't think you do either. So now we're also going to remove the seeds. I don't care for the seeds except in cherry tomatoes. I think I had mentioned that actually one other time. I just find their texture to be kind of icky. So I'm going to finish doing this, and I have a lot of tomatoes to do this for. Big chunk of ice, look at that. Doop. And I'll come back when we're ready for the next step, and that's going to take a little while, so you're going to... Okay, so all the tomatoes are peeled now in this batch. I have several batches, but I'm going to have you guys follow me with this batch, because why do we need to see the same thing over and over? This is a very large colander. Again, small holes. We don't want the pulp and the flesh to go through those big holes, and it just damages them and breaks it apart. And we don't want that. They've been frozen, so they're more fragile. We've got it in a giant bowl underneath. Oops, let me see if I can get it. There we go, and you can see the liquid draining. I'm gonna let this drain overnight. I really want this as dry as I can get it, and then we move on to the next step. See you soon. Okay, so now we've got our roasting pan. This has got high sides. This has high sides because before we start to reduce the amount of liquid that is in our tomatoes as it roasts, it's gonna release some. And we don't wanna cause a bunch of smoke in the oven. That is so unpleasant. So here we go. We're going to take our tomatoes after they've drained as much as we can. Slide them right into there. I don't know what you are. Oh, okay. We're gonna spread them out. Okay. Now we're gonna take our onions, lay them over the whole thing. We want these onions to caramelize. I'm not giving amounts because it would depend on how many tomatoes you're working with. Here I have, I think it was 6 pounds. And then our garlic. Okay, everybody in. Then we have our oil. And the oil will be part of the finished product. Okay. Salt. Now we're going to salt it just enough to help bring out the liquid from these onions and so forth. We're not salting it enough that when you're making your final dish, that you won't have to salt it because, you know, this is already salted. This is just enough to get things going and make it delicious right from the beginning, but you will still have to salt when you're making your final dish with when you open up your jars or you take it out of the freezer and you work with it. If you are someone who has a restriction and you can't have salt, it's not required. This is simply for flavor. So it's not part of the processing. It's not part of the preservation. So if you can't have salt, no problem. Okay, and this is just freshly ground black pepper. This is going to go in the oven. I have the onion set to 400 degrees. Siri, stop talking. I'm sorry. Siri thinks I'm talking to her. In this pan, we have the tomatoes, the onions, the garlic, olive oil, salt, and pepper. Nothing else. And this is going to roast for a good long while. Based on how full this thing is, I think I'm probably going to look at 90 minutes to 2 hours. And I'll probably take a peek. Next time I take a peek to see where we are, I'll show you. Okay, so we're not going to worry about the exact time. I'm going to show you what you're looking for, which is a much better way to tell. Here we are at 90 minutes. Let's see, let me pull it out. We're just about there. I'm going to let it go the additional 30. I'm going to take it to the full 2 hours. Here we are at the 2 hour mark, and that's perfect. So if you happen to have, this is one of these giant roasting pans. I just showed you the name, not because I'm caring about the name, it's just, it only comes in one size that I know of. Okay. There she is. Look how beautiful. Okay, so now what we're going to do from here is I'm going to transfer all of this to a nice big pot. And then I'll show you what comes next. And this is our pot. Nice big pot. And on top here, we have a food mill. Now, the whole purpose of this is to remove the seeds. We don't want anything in here except pure deliciousness. So we're going to take everything from here, the onions and everything, go into here. And I'll show you what's next. Okay, so you just drop everything in. And then when you want to clear it, you go backwards and then forwards again. And you just keep doing this till you have everything done. We're almost done. When you stop seeing stuff come through, you go the other way. And this solid piece here helps clear the blade. And it drops more stuff down. And you can hear it engage again. Everybody should have a food mill if it's possible. Very, very handy tool. In fact, I'll do some more projects with it so you can see what else it can do and why you might want one, assuming you don't have one. If you do, this is the time to break it out. The seeds that you see here also will not be thrown in the trash. I try to throw virtually nothing in the trash if I can avoid it. This stuff I will mix up with some stale bread and I'll send it out to Charlotte, our pig. She loves this stuff. Okay. Oh, one more thing. Yeah, let me take you off of here. This is the juices that are left in the pan. Now these are delicious. We don't throw these away. This will go into our pot with all the pulp and the goodness that's down below here. You see? Let's move this. See? This is tomato passata. Look how thick that is. And I didn't have to reduce it. Sometimes it can be a little thinner depending on the variety of tomatoes that you were processing. In this case, they're so perfect that I don't have to reduce anything. Look at this. The flavor is huge because we intensified it by roasting. You can taste a bit of the sweetness from the onions, beautiful depth from the garlic. Now, here's where you have some choices. You can choose to add some herbs. In most cases, when you were canning this, or if you were canning this, you would add some basil to each jar. You could add a little pinch of oregano. Now, why I would recommend you give it some real thought. Because right now, all it tastes like is tomatoes and little sweetness from the onions and the garlic. So it's just got this very open palate kind of flavor, but much more interesting than just plain old tomatoes. But if you go ahead and you add herbs to it, you just have to keep in mind that that flavor is already in there when you go to make a dish with it afterwards. So, I mean, if you were going to use a jar of these tomatoes for something that basil wouldn't be the flavor that you'd want, you want to be mindful of that and not use this, or mark the jars carefully or something like that. This particular batch, I am going to go outside and grab some basil, and I'm going to put the stove on very, very low, and I'm going to let it just steep just a bit with some fresh some fresh basil, and then I'm going to remove it so it's just got that little bit of a touch. We're back, and we're all set up for the final step, which is canning our passata. I am going to put in these jars. I don't know exactly how much this particular batch yielded, so I have 5 jars ready. I don't think it's going to be 5 jars, but I would hate to not have 5 jars ready. The new rules say that we no longer have to sterilize our jars if our jars are going to be in a canner for more than 10 minutes. So, but I can't help myself. I still do it old school, and these jars are cleaned within an inch of their lives. That's just automatic pilot for me. They are sterilized because I can't seem to stop myself. We also no longer need to preheat our lids. So I don't do that. I skip that now. So there's something. Anyhow, I am pressure canning these tomatoes as opposed to water bath canning, which is what normal practice is for canning tomato products. But hear me out for why. The reason is I don't like the flavor of the acid that is required to be added to these jars, which would be lemon juice, vinegar, or citric acid. And I went through all the trouble to grow these amazing tomatoes that have this beautiful flavor of summer, just to ruin it with this acid. So I would rather take the extra step and can it as a low acid food and use a pressure canner, which eliminates my need to add that acid. So all I have to add to my jars is salt. So each jar will get a teaspoon of salt. I'm using pink Himalayan salt. It's what I tend to use most often. Fine pink salt. That's just what I don't know. At some point I fell into the idea that this is better. I can't say that it is or not. I've just gotten used to it and I like it. I wouldn't go running out and spend extra money for it as long as you're using sea salt. You don't want to use any salt like iodized salt. You absolutely don't want to use that. Okay, so I'm going to put a teaspoon of salt in each of these jars. I'm only going to do 3 jars to start with, just to make sure I have enough passata. And then I'm going to go over and show you the canner I'm using. I am using a pressure canner. It is the Presto Precise Electric Pressure Canner. I have nothing to do with those people. They don't know me. No funding has been created or anything like that. I like this product. I like it a lot. My other pressure canner is the big giant mama that I break out when it's time to do huge batches of things. And I love that thing. When I die, I want it thrown in the grave with me. That's how much I love it. But in the meantime, when I'm doing smaller batches, I use this. And I think it's a great piece of equipment. I'll show it to you and I'll show you how I use it. But first, let's get these jars set. In case anyone cares, the jars I'm using are ball jars. I am careful to use a premium jar. I know there have been some other jars that have been released on the market for brands I don't know. And I'm afraid to use them, to be honest, because going through so much work, starting all this stuff from seed to make it all the way to try to get to my pantry and have the glass crack in the canner and my hard work be ruined, I'm just not willing to take the risk. So I would love to hear from anyone. If you've tried new jars and you think they're great, I would love to know. But I have yet to try any of the new ones. I use Ball and Mason. As far as my lids go, this is from, let me move this out of the way. I use these jars, these lids, they're from 4 jars. Again, no affiliation. I just think they do a great job. And the price is better, and I have had 0 seal failures. So take that for what it's worth. I think they do a great job. It's a smaller family company, and I like that. I support smaller companies whenever I can. So I'm going to put the salt in just 3 jars for now. If I have more passata, great. Okay, let me grab my sauce. Now, I did something. My canner is beeping at me to tell me it's warm. I made a decision. I decided not to add extra herbs because I want to have as much freedom to do with this passata as I'd wish. If I add basil, like I mentioned earlier, at least I think I did, that is going to carry through to anything that I go to use this passata for. So what I've decided to do was leave it with just salt and pepper. That way I am able to, when I'm going to finish the product and make whatever sauce I'd like to make, or I'm making a pizza or whatever it is I'd like to do, I'm adding this to a stew or some sort of a braise, I will be able to decide what the flavoring will be then. I need to keep half an inch at the top. Okay. It's very, very important that we clean the lids. If you don't clean your lids well, your jars run the risk of not sealing. Whoops, sorry, I hit the contraption here. I'm an old school person making my peace with new tech, and it's a little bit bumpy. I apologize. My dog apparently agrees. Okay, so we're just going to fill up. Move to the next. Make sure I'm using the one with the salt in it. Now this salt that's going in the canner, this particular amount of salt cannot be or should not be left out. It's actually part of the preserving process. It's important. I know earlier I was explaining that little bit of salt that we used to help release the liquid from the onions and so forth, that you could decide to leave it in or not. That's absolutely true. But when it comes to, we've got 3 quarts almost exactly. When it comes to this part where we're canning, it is important to go ahead and add that teaspoon of salt. It is part of what's preserving our product. Okay, so, but it's not very much. I'm gonna go ahead and grab the last little bit that's here. Make sure that we have at least half an inch of headspace. Haha, perfection. We've got 3. I'll put this in the sink. Now we're just going to clean our rim. If you don't do a good job of cleaning your rim, you run the risk of having the seal fail. And that is probably one of the most depressing things in the world. I mean, yes, I'm aware that it's not the most depressing thing in the world, but I'm dramatic. I'm sorry. Okay, headspace is very important. Each recipe comes with its own required amount of headspace. You can't change that. If you don't leave the headspace, the jar will likely explode, not break, but I mean, it will cause the seal to fail in the canner, and you will see the contents of your beautiful jars all over the place in your water. Okay, so we make sure we're spotlessly clean. It occurs to me that if this is your first time watching someone can, which I doubt, but I'm just going to make sure, you want to do this so it's finger tight. So we're going to put this on and then give it a twist just like that and stop. You don't want to crank down on it. That won't be able to release the steam and create the seal. So we make sure we're in place. Make sure we're lined up and give it a twist. We're not going to crank down on that, even though it seems like that would be the thing to do. That's it, okay? One last thing I wanted to mention since we're talking about canning. This particular type of the electronic canners, pressure canners, can sense where they are, what altitude they are. So we are not far from sea level at this point, so it sets the pressure accordingly. This very same machine, we could take it up into the mountains and it would set the new pressure accordingly, which is really pretty cool. The other types, the more manual types, you have to know what setting, what altitude you are, and make the adjustments with the weight that comes with your canner. And that's very, very important. So please don't skip that step. Okay? Okay, so then it starts beeping, and it'll tell you to put the regulator on, which is this happy little guy. We change this to, whoops, the can setting, and then we hit, and now the timer starts. Now this is, I let it cool in place. It'll tell you when it's done, and it'll go to cool, and it just naturally cools down. I don't open it. I let it go until it's cooled down enough that all the pressure's gone on its own. I don't play with it. I got a steam burn once messing with that, and I've never done it again. Steam burns are unpleasant, so please don't hurt yourself. Learn from my stupidity. Okay, see you when this is done. And here we are at the end with deeply flavored tomato passata. It's nice and thick, huge flavor, but it's ready for whatever it is you'd like to make with an amazing tomato product. You can break this out in the middle of winter and it'll taste like the middle of summer. What I really love about making small batches of different things is my pantry is an interesting place. I don't end up with 50 jars of just one thing. Yes, I do have a lot of things that I can a lot of because I'm an ingredient canner. What that means is I like to have the beginnings and the interesting bases for lots of things. I don't tend to can finished meals and stuff. It's just not, I don't enjoy them. That doesn't mean that other people don't love them. I don't. So I'm just speaking for myself. But to have interesting things on the shelf and just have a pantry that just calls to you with cool stuff, even, in the middle of the winter, you can't get better than this. Now let's not forget, we still have tomato skins to deal with. And I can't wait to show you where we're going with that. Plus, we have more canning to do, more preserving, fermenting, you name it, it's on its way. Thank you so much for spending time with me in my kitchen. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly enjoy having you. If you like what we do, please consider subscribing and giving me a thumbs up. Thank you so much for visiting with me, and I'll see you next time.